The oratorio Vedem premiered in 2010, reprised in 2016.
We're so proud of that work and so proud to perform it.
In my opinion, Vedem's beauty comes from the dissonance. Like, I know that may not sound right, but the whole entire Holocaust was a dissonant time.
More than 1 million children were murdered under Nazi rule. The story of Vedem takes place in the Terezin concentration camp. It's a stunning tribute to the teenage boy prisoners who wrote poetry and prose for a secret magazine they called Vedem.
But just to think, just to have the knowledge that those boys were our age and they were going through things that no human being should have to go through in their life.
And then, yeah, just da-da-da-da-da.
Composer Laitman.
Yeah, let's just try that, yeah.
They were exposed to all that horrible, everything horrible that you shouldn't see, that you shouldn't feel, that you shouldn't know. And the oratorio begins with this, hear my story now.
And Laurie's oratorio is a tribute, it's a musical tribute to these boys' courage and dignity and circumstances that we can't even begin to imagine.
Please welcome 4 of the surviving boys of Terezin from home number 1 onto the stage.
For Vedem's world premiere in 2010, Minna Miller made this happen.
I thought it started to click. Well, we're going to have a piece about this writing, about those boys. Let's invite them to the concert. Let's have it a reunion. 65 years, they haven't seen each other.
6 survivors.
4 of the 6 surviving boys, men in their 80s, were reunited at the world premiere and featured in the MOR documentary, The Boys of Terezin.
The big day.
Emil Koppel has traveled to Seattle, Washington from Melbourne, Australia. Emil hasn't seen George Brady since they were together as boys.
As I studied Jojo, right? Nice to see you after so many years.
I recognize you right away. Huh?
Well, yeah, of course.
Like how we do.
It's marvelous, isn't it? What is it, 60 years, 65 years?
65 years.
65
That's
years.
right, yeah.
Wow.
Except you are the only one I didn't know where to find you.
And do you think often about them, about the boys?
No, I didn't, and I didn't talk about it for many years. But eventually.
It was a very emotional evening for me from the beginning, because in the course of working on the piece and the interviews, and in my own conversation with Emil Koppel, one of the survivors who came from Australia, of learning how the tune of Dvorak Humoresque kept him alive.
It was a very long death march. Every time when I already was completely down, in my mind, in my thing, the music I heard, I always sort of was humming it. Da 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 da. That music affected me terribly all the time, and just simply I kept going and I kept going and I kept going.
In Emil's inspiring words, the Dvorak Humoresque meant everything to me at a time when there was very little humanity in my life. It encouraged me to take one more step and then another. We speak of the power of music as a life-giving force. And Emil's story is a profound example of just that. I was teary-eyed at that point. So by the time we got to the end of the piece, and the 4 men walked up on stage. It was truly overwhelming, and they each came up and they shook our hands, and I truly swelled up, and they made a few comments.
Sitting there, I was thinking about the guys who couldn't make it. While we made it.
It's really a memorial to our friends. I hope they could listen wherever they are.
See it, yeah.
You think they were?
I hope so.
Oh, are they watching it from above?
It was intriguing the last time when we did the initial performance and we had survivors come.
40, okay. So just imagine in our room there were 42 of us in one room, which was not even as big as this one.
And I remember sitting in the room and watching our boys interact with the survivors. And they had been told that these men were living history. But the boys cut through that and just got down to the questions about, the very true human questions. What was it like? What was your life like? And I think any of the boys who had that experience had to be, touched to the core of that, And those gentlemen were so, wonderfully articulate and clearly such, wonderful human beings. And I think the humanity of that, shone through. I think the boys said to me afterwards, it's hard to believe that these guys were subjected to the things we know they were because they didn't show the scars of that.
Hear our story now is the first thing you hear, and then also it's the last thing you hear. I think it's a desperate plea, right, from the past, from the voices of the past that the boys represent, that we represent, to listen. Right? Listen up and remember. And in that way, it's kind of a beautiful encapsulation of the purpose of music of remembrance, right? Listen, remember,